Hi, thank you so much for joining us for this exciting and informational webinar, Creative Arts Interventions for Older Adults with a History of Trauma. I'm just going to give some background on the center. The mission of the JF&A Center for Advancing Holocaust Survivor Care is to promote national expansion of innovative PCTI programs and services for Holocaust survivors and other older adult victims of trauma. With a grant from the U.S. Administration for Community Living and the Administration on Aging, and funds raised through private philanthropy, Jewish Federations of North America's Center for Advancing Holocaust Survivor Care awards subgrants to help community-based organizations advance person-centered, trauma-informed supportive services for Holocaust survivors in the United States. A quick definition of trauma-informed care: PCTI, which is the person-centered, trauma-informed care that we were talking about, is a holistic approach to wellness that promotes dignity, strength, and empowerment among the Holocaust survivors we support. PCTI care incorporates knowledge about the role of trauma in Holocaust survivors' lives into programs, policies, and procedures. On this webinar, participants will learn innovative, person-centered, trauma-informed creative arts programs for older adults, how PCTI creative arts programs can address the mental, physical, and cognitive health and well-being of older adults with a history of trauma, PCTI creative arts programs that have been successfully implemented for Holocaust survivors, and strategies for implementing PCTI creative arts programs. Joining us today are Maria Kesselman, who is the program coordinator and creative arts therapist at Klein Life in Philadelphia, Nicole Brown, the program coordinator of Jewish Family and Community Services in Jacksonville, Florida, and Elise Gold, the executive director of Jewish Family Service of Orange County in New York. I will allow Maria a chance to introduce herself before we begin her presentation, and each speaker after will introduce themselves for about a minute. So, Maria, are you ready to begin?
Hello, yes, I'm ready.
Excellent.
All right, so my name is Maria Kesselman. I am a program coordinator and a creative arts therapist at Klein Life, and I'll be presenting on person-centered, trauma-informed approaches to creative arts therapies that we use here at Klein Life with our participants who are Holocaust survivors from the former Soviet Union. Next. So I will start out by providing an overview of our Revive program here and discuss services that we offer through the program. Then I'll focus on PCTI approach to creative arts therapies in developing, structuring, running, and adjusting our programs. Then I'll provide participant feedback, common trends, and challenges we noted, and suggestions for replication. Next. So the program that we offer at Klein Life is called Revive, which is Возрождение in Russian, and the logo is Phoenix, a bird that rises from the ashes. Both the name and the logo were suggested by our participants as they were involved in program development. So the goal of our program is to provide a holistic wellness structure to support our participants in improving their physical, emotional, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide these services in our participants' native language, which is Russian, or with an interpreter present. We encourage all our facilitators to take a culturally sensitive approach. Next. So some of the services that we provide through this program include larger socialization programming, subsidized trips, culturally appropriate and social meals, Tai Chi, both aqua and on land, yoga and Reiki, music and spirituality, individual counseling, and creative arts therapies, which are art therapy and dance movement therapy. I'll be speaking a little bit more about art therapy just because those are the sessions that I facilitate, but I will try to speak as much as I can on dance movement therapy, and it is something that receives a lot of very positive feedback. Next. So this slide shows the definitions of art therapy and dance movement therapy as defined by the American Art Therapy Association and the American Dance Movement Therapy Association. So art therapy is defined as an integrative mental health and human services profession that enriches the lives of individuals, families, and communities through active art making, creative process, applied psychological theory, and human experience within the psychotherapeutic relationship. Dance movement therapy is defined as the psychotherapeutic use of movement to promote emotional, social, cognitive, and physical integration of the individual for the purposes of improving health and well-being. Next. So more generally, we took that PCTI approach to creative arts therapies through employing cultural humility and an intersectional lens, creating a collaborative relationship to decision-making, and in this way involving our participants in program creation, establishing a safe emotional and physical space, promoting choice and empowerment, giving a participant an out so they can always leave early or step out when something feels uncomfortable, and identify and discuss potential triggers when relevant. Next. More specifically to our program, we found out the needs of our community and created the therapeutic intervention based on those needs. We worked hard to build rapport and trust with our participants through individual meetings. All our program facilitators received PCTI training. An advisory board committee formed of Holocaust survivors from the former Soviet Union was formed to get participant input. We continue to employ flexibility to ensure PCTI care, so we consistently adjust programming based on feedback. And in developing the program, we were considerate of the psychosocial stages of development as defined by Erikson that our participants are at. Next. So in accordance to those stages, life reflection, meaning making, and desire to leave a legacy are normative during this stage in our participants' lives. Next. So when developing the first series of art therapy cycles, we took into account the feedback that we received from participants based on kind of building rapport and trust with them. So that required expanding the scope of traditional art therapy practice to fit those needs. Still, it was really important to explain art therapy versus art and computer class because for a lot of our participants, that was their first exposure to therapy. So we took into account their interests and values and created a project that provided them with an opportunity to reflect, create meaning, and make something that could be used as a way for them to leave a legacy. We also incorporated culturally relevant content, connection building, individual support, and we're mindful of challenges that may come up during this project. Next. So the first project that we worked on in our art therapy cycles was the creation of a family album using art and technology. Next. So the participants gathered family photographs. They met together with me to sort out the family photographs and see a sample of the album. I scanned all their photographs and put them onto a flash drive for each of them. We met weekly for 6 to 7 weeks, depending on their technological skills and feelings they came up during the process to create a personal album using Shutterfly. Each participant was provided with opportunities to meet with me individually during the process in addition to group sessions for additional support, whether it's, through technological means or emotional support. Then once albums were created and ordered and we got them back, we met for 2 two-hour sessions for them to discuss their album, share stories, and any feelings they came up for them. Next. Once the participants became more comfortable with our therapy and more open to trying things that they may not necessarily be perfect at, because perfectionism was a huge barrier initially, we developed a workshop that we called Art Therapy for Relaxation, in which they got to use art and the creative process to learn ways to relax and de-stress. And at each session, they're exposed to a variety of mediums, as different things cannot work better for different people, and they learn techniques that hopefully that they can apply at home if they choose, if they find them helpful and relevant, and no art experience is necessary for them to engage in those workshops. So if we could play the video. This is one of our sessions in which they started out by painting to the sound of the music, kind of following the rhythm. And then they used a string pulling technique to create an image on the canvas while the background was already painted. All right, we can move on. So this just gives you a basic idea. Next. So for dance movement therapy, it was also essential for us to explain the difference to them between dance movement therapy and dance class, because for all of our participants, it was the first time that they ever received dance movement therapy. Also, it was essential to incorporate culturally relevant music. And at one point, our participants expressed interest in trying out yoga as part of dance movement therapy, and our facilitator happened to also be a certified yoga instructor, so she was able to incorporate some components of yoga. They also incorporated socialization and connection building, and interventions were adapted to participants' needs and abilities. And below you'll find a blurb of how dance movement therapy was marketed, and again, the idea that no prior dance background was required, and that the whole focus is on emotional, physical, social, and cognitive wellness. So we can play a video that can show you a little bit of what a dance movement therapy session looked like. All right, next. So some of the impact that we noted and was reported to us was the ability of our participants to reflect on their life. One of our program participants shared that during the creation of the family album, she was able to look back and reflect on her entire life. Visual representation of trauma. For example, one of our participants included a black square to represent all the family members on one side of her family that were killed during the Holocaust, and this was really a way for her to process this. Ability to leave a legacy, the feeling of community that came up during all our sessions. Ability to come together after a tragedy. So we had a dance movement therapy that just happened to be scheduled right after we had our memorial for the attack on Tree of Life Synagogue, and our participants expressed the importance of coming together in music and dance to celebrate life after a tragedy like that. Participants report having a reason to get out of the house and getting tools to get through grief and pain, particularly in terms of loss of a spouse or another family member. Next. Some of the common trends that we noted was the reduction of stigma around mental health. So more people are coming out and sharing, especially in individual meetings, their experience of depression. They're more free to discuss depression, both individually and sometimes in group setting, which allowed for decreased loneliness. There's more people that are requesting individual support. Our participants have also reported improvements in their emotional wellness, physical health, socialization. So they talk a lot about how nice it is to have a reason to get out of the house and have a different activity each day that they can look forward to and feel like they're a greater part of community. Next. Some of the challenges that we encountered were capacity issues, so the size of class, and facilitators' time and resources, accessibility, so not everyone is able to make it to class who may benefit from class, and we do not provide services in the home. So some of the limitations of services, high participant needs, and time limitations have been an issue. Difficulty finding and recruiting Russian-speaking facilitators, initial misunderstanding of the program, so the need to really provide our participants with education and psychoeducation about what services we provide, and adapting to variety of ability and skills levels, so what we do is relevant for everyone who wishes to participate. Next. So in terms of our suggestions for replication, we found that it was extremely helpful to incorporate culturally relevant content. So for example, families and leaving a legacy and having that community is really important culturally, and as well as incorporation of culturally relevant music that many of our participants have grown up with as part of their dance movement therapy. Development of program that meets participant interests and needs, and that really came from involving our participants in program development and really making them feel like it was their own. And then also providing opportunities for both groups and individual support, because groups allow for connection building, and there may also be things that they may not feel comfortable sharing within group settings, so allowing them that space. And then also being able to prepare ways for them to give feedback and be accepting of feedback and responding to this feedback by adjusting our programs accordingly. So we definitely do feel that doing all those things helped us make our program successful and helped our participants be open to trying things that may be new to them or that may have been stigmatized before within the community, but have led to positive results for them. All right, thank you all for listening.
Great, thank you so much, Maria. Right before Nicole gets started, I just want to chime in. I forgot to mention at the beginning to please hold your questions until the end. We will have ample time for Q&A where you can use the chat function to ask questions. So, or you can email the Holocaust Center email address, and we will get back to you. So with that, Nicole, if you would introduce yourself briefly, and then we're so excited for your presentation.
Hi, I'm Nicole Brown. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I run this program, but also do counseling and some other services for our survivors. It's kind of hard following Maria. She did such a great job, but I guess next, please. So we're based in Jacksonville, and Palm Coast is about an hour south of us. And so we discovered that in the 80s, there was a developer that came to Palm Coast, and a lot of our survivors moved down there. And the services were limited for our survivors now that they're aging and in the below poverty level as far as income goes. So they were having a hard time maintaining a healthy diet. There were so many survivors there, but having a hard time forming a sense of community, and having, with the language barrier, having a difficult time accessing local resources. So we came up with this programming to help address those problems. Next. So one of the things we do is our culinary therapy program. So we provide fresh fruit and vegetable produce and pantry goods twice a month. It's a delivery service, and also coordinate socialization events for them, which we'll get into detail about. And then we also, at those events, connect them to community resources. Next. So the first step that we took was we contacted a local co-op, and we have a contract with them to do the food delivery. And so with the delivery people, it's the same people each or every other week that deliver the box produce to our clients. We provided PCTI training for them, and we have it's consistent staffing, so they get to know our clients. They they report back to us if anything's out of ordinary, or if they have concern with our clients. It's nice because they provide what's healthy and in season, where a lot of our clients were just used to the same thing over and over again, and with health concerns and different diagnoses, they weren't really sure what the right foods to be eating were. And then some of the cons of this food approach with the delivery service is that the clients, sometimes their expectations, they're used to their traditional foods, and so getting them to explore and try new vegetables and fruits that might be a better fit for medical things that are going on, it's kind of hard to get them on board. But that's part of the thing we do through our group programming, and so sometimes we can't always accommodate their requests for what fruits and vegetables they receive. But okay, next. So we've partnered with a local community center in Palm Coast, and some of our topics include healthy diet, cultural cuisine, and healthcare services and other resources that they have in Palm Coast. And before we started having our groups at the community center, we met with the staff and provided a brief PCTI training for them in case there's anything that come up. Sometimes our clients go there for other activities as well. And next. So the first group that we did, we were not sure how many of our clients would attend, but as you can see, it was well attended. And we had our local, or not our local, but every year we have an Israeli emissary come, and it's their job to bring part of Israel to the community. And so she discussed the migration of her family to Israel, and which gave our clients an opportunity to discuss their experiences in the past of moving to the United States and what their family's been through, and they realized that a lot of commonalities that they have. And then she also did a cooking demonstration of hachapuri. And what's interesting is, though it's a Georgian dish or Israeli dish, a lot of our survivors from the former Soviet Union had made similar items and shared their experience and how their family used to make it. So they were able to connect on a lot of similar and differences. Next. So what we also tried to do was, when I'm aware of what the ingredients are for that month in their food box. So when we made something like an Israeli salad, I made sure to incorporate some of the vegetables or the items that are provided to kind of help teach them different ways they can use the food that's provided. So clients were engaged in the discussion. They were engaged in demonstration. A lot of them wanted to help show us how we were doing it wrong or right, and add their opinion to it, which was really nice. They felt comfortable in the community center. They're very welcome. The people there were very welcoming. And for having the first meeting, a lot of them knew each other, a lot of them didn't. And at first they kind of sat in little cliques, but they got warmed up a little bit towards the end of the group. The challenge we had was, for our grants purposes, was that they did not want to complete surveys. So we mostly got our feedback verbally from them. Next. The next event that we had was we asked them to bring in their favorite recipe to share. And I guess that's kind of where we got into all of our invitations are in Russian and English. And so for this one, instead of bringing a recipe to share, they all brought the prepared meals. So it was my first learning of maybe they just interpret it differently, but it was really nice because they were so proud of their meals. And they were all discussing how, again, they made it differently in their families, or how I should do it for my family. And we talk a lot with the culinary therapy. We talk about cooking as means of expression of their feelings and expression of cultural differences and their familial relationships with food. And so I think that they benefited a lot more from this event than I guess I thought initially they would. And it was a really nice meal that we all shared together. Next. So, oh, I guess I just went over that. Again, the clients didn't want to share and answer the survey. And some of them, they sometimes complain about the items that are in the mailbox, but when asked if they wanted to cancel the mailbox, no, they're still really appreciative of it. And then I guess the interpretation, we have a Russian-speaking care manager who's always present and able to, translate anything if needed. Next. The next event we had was local representative from Elder Source who came to present to them what services that our clients are entitled to. And next. And so they were able to ask the representative questions related to their care. Most of them didn't even know that there was Elder Source office in their area. So a light meal was provided, and again, using the ingredients from the food box. And then we offered them interpreter, but they were, I think, understanding it, but then a lot of questions, individual questions for that representative later. Next. And then this other event, another event we had was we had another Israeli emissary or shliach come and to talk. Our clients started giving us more requests. They want to have more groups. One of the things they wanted to do was have a stronger connection to Israel. So he came and talked to our clients about Israel then, about 70 years ago, and Israel now, and shared pictures and stories. And our clients really enjoyed having that connection to Israel and discussing their opinions and thoughts. And the food that we had was another Israeli salad, but also we made barekas. Next. And the clients were able to talk about the way that they make barekas and how they take leftover food, or they take whatever they have and put as the filling. So it was interesting to hear their story and their connection to that and how they make it now versus how they used to make it years ago. The results of our programming is that our clients are benefiting from the food box because they're eating somewhat healthier, they have new ideas for food, they have the opportunity to socialize. Our clients are now meeting, whereas in the very beginning they had preferred seating that they would, friends, and now they're more unified as a group. They also started getting together after our groups, and they'll ask me, well, where did you get this ingredient from? And where did you get that ingredient from? They started meeting together and making the foods that we talk about in our groups together. We've had several other groups that aren't here, aren't pictured. They wanted to have a game day together. So we, again, talked about whatever food that was that month and had game days and other, festivities that they've requested. So they're getting, giving us ideas, really engaged and starting to open up a lot more and be unified as a group. And then at first, when we first started this program, we had a little over 30 identified survivors in Palm Coast, and our list is growing. We're now over 50, and so this program is really helping us being able to provide food for them and socialization. And I think is that my last slide?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. That was awesome, Nicole. Thank you. Elise, you're up. Do you mind saying a little bit about yourself and then getting started?
Yes, sure. Thank you. As you mentioned earlier, I am the Executive Director at Jewish Family Service of Orange County. I want to just mention that I see this role as a creative one, as in this position there's a lot of opportunity to create programs that meet the needs of people we serve. And I want to also share that I'm one of a team here. So together we co-created the program Expression Through the Arts. And I also want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present on behalf of Jewish Family Service of Orange County, New York. Next. You see on the screen here that the objectives that JFNA would like for me to cover. I'll do my best to address each of the objectives, and the best way that I know how to do that is by sharing stories. Next. Our program's goal is, as you see, that the survivors will have socialization experiencing while expressing their stories through visual arts, storytelling, or music. While a key objective of the Center of Advancing Holocaust Survivor Care is in the realm of mental, physical, and cognitive health, we focused on the social aspects of survivor care. So many survivors live alone, and living alone can lead to social isolation, which then can lead to depression. Our program addresses these needs, and then in turn will address the mental, physical, and cognitive health. Next. So over the years, our staff has developed warm, trusting relationships with survivors in our community. We realize that we ourselves don't have creative skills of music and art. So to that end, we've contracted with artists in the community. And I also will be using the term providers. They're providers of services. And I will let you know when we reached out to the providers, they were thrilled with this opportunity. They found it to be an honor. And at the same time, they wanted tools so that they were better equipped to work with the survivors of trauma. To that end, it was critical for everyone that works with a survivor to be trained in PCTI methods. Next. I mentioned earlier there were two aspects to the expression through the arts program. I'll first start up by talking about the visual arts. One thing to note, different than Maria at Klein Life, we did not work with art therapists. We work with creative arts facilitators. So while it's really important to note and highlight that art, the act of doing art, certainly can be therapeutic. We probably have all engaged in some kind of art form or another. Even coloring books could be very calming. Our artists are not licensed therapists. A key to the program is that it is successful. And meeting the survivors where they are, ensuring that they are capable of the task, tuning into what they wanted to express through their artwork was at play when working with the survivors. Next. In learning of the trauma of Holocaust survivors, or any trauma that has been endured by anyone, we learn that there are huge issues of control. Choices were taken away. In our program, we offer choice wherever possible. This will include choices like, what room would you like to work in? Or where do you want to sit? Oh, I might as well note here that we would meet in the survivors' homes. So when it comes to choice, it's all about empowerment and giving the survivors of choices and listening to their voice. Next. Please allow me to share the story of working with Rachel with you. And for a moment, I want to give a shout out to Kavod, who many of you know, and if you don't, go and look them up. They might want to partner with you. They are responsible for this beautiful picture of Rachel. What I'd like to share here is that though we've known Rachel for so many years and worked with her on so many levels, she was adamant about not wanting to do art, at the beginning, I should say. We'd hear her say repeatedly, I'm not an artist, I'm not an artist. But with time and, knowing that we had this trusting relationship with Rachel, she agreed to give it a try. Next. If you scan this slide, you'll notice again the theme of choice comes up. A goal was knowing that Rachel really had issues about not being artist, the creative arts facilitator, Sharon, thought that let's do something really simple. Printmaking is something that even a non-artist can do. Rachel experienced that in her earlier years. She loved to perform and also watch Israeli folk dancing. Sharon, in her toolkit, did not have any stencils that would fit the shapes and images of what Rachel wanted. So, in a very person-centered way, Sharon created these stencils for Rachel to use. Next. As you see, Rachel is beaming. She was in her glory. All she really had to do was use the brayer over the ink. Next. Sharon, the creative arts facilitator, even suggested using musical sheets to print on. While they were working on this piece, right in the middle of this session, Rachel stopped everything and said, "Stop, stop, stop. I need to call my son. I have to tell him I'm an artist. I'm an artist." So you see the tides have changed. We're going to move now next to the songwriting component of our program. Stacy, who's a care manager here at Jewish Family Service, shared that, Elise, one thing that's happening is many of the survivors are wanting to tell their story. Sage Arts was was a great organization to partner with because of their mission. Their mission aligns with ours. They work on telling stories through song. And by the way, not only with this program, but with all of our programs, we find that it's all about partnerships. So we are really gifted to have found partners in doing this work with us. Next. The structure of this part of the program is that all of the survivors, the providers are trained in PCTI methods. Initially, after they're trained, they would meet with a staff, as the songwriter would meet with a staff and the survivor. From that point on, relationships develop between the survivor and the songwriter over a course of many visits. Normally what happens is themes emerge from the visits, from learning about the stories. There's no expectation about the theme. The themes, what's discussed at those visits, can be anything. It does not have to be about the Holocaust or how they survived the Holocaust or the last 7 decades. It could be as simple as sharing their favorite matzo ball soup recipe with their great-grandchildren. In the end, well, you see that over the course of many visits, it's probably after half of the visits, 5 or 6 of them, that the songwriter starts putting pen to paper and creates a song that they will share their draft with the survivor, and then the survivor has input and more or less co-creates the song with the songwriter. The songwriter will be very attuned to what kind of music works with this song and what kind of music does the survivor like. After the song is created and rehearsed with other professional musicians, not the survivors themselves, a concert is produced. This year, we had a concert held during the week of Yom HaShoah, and I must tell you, it was incredible. It was so deeply touching, not only to the survivors themselves, but to the hundreds of people that were in the audience. The following words come to mind when reflecting on that process. It was one of honor, dignity, choice, and listening to the voices. In a moment, you're going to see a video clip. So there's a full-length documentary that's in the works. The clip that we're going to see, just a part of, is part of a trailer, or it's also in the field known as a teaser. It was filmed prior to the concert itself. It's going to give you a sense of the visits that happened between, can you pause that for a sec? Thanks. Between the songwriter and the survivor, in this case the survivor and his wife, There's a bit also that we'll watch of the rehearsal time and some words from the survivors themselves about the experience. Okay. You can hit play. We need sound.
There's no sound. Hi, Elise. I'm sorry, we're having a technical issue with our speaker here. We will provide the link in the recording that we send out to all participants. We apologize for the inconvenience.
Okay, thank you. And I actually have the link also on the last slide. I'm going to, so yeah, there's nothing like seeing and hearing the voices of the survivors and getting the experience. So I understand technical difficulties, and I regret that your listening audience cannot see it now so that the program comes to life, but I hope you take the time to do it later. I'll also share within that link, the link that is being sent is 10 minutes. Please watch it from start to finish. The little clip that was going to be shared here was only 2 minutes, but I really urge you and your colleagues to sit down and watch that whole thing. And hopefully in time to come, you can watch the full-length documentary when they're going to be including the concert itself. Thanks. Okay, let's just pretend we had a little taste of that, though, as we move on. Next. Oh, what do we have here? No, okay. So I want to say that during the concert itself, there was a survivor that was sitting in our field, and she was a survivor that was clear that she did not want to participate in the songwriting component. But it wasn't even halfway through the concert that she was so moved. She turned to Paula, who is coordinating this program, and said, I am now ready to share my story and have a song be created. This program was really about connection. As mentioned before, the socialization component, it was for the survivors to connect with a songwriter, a person who was so interested in their lives. It was connecting back to their story, their history, connecting to a larger community through the performance itself, which was made public, and hopefully connecting to generations going forward. One of the songwriters mentioned after the concert that this whole experience was like medicine in healing the wounds from the past and healing for future generations. So regarding the goals and objectives, I think I have hit on them all. I do want to say that one big challenge was to get survivors involved, and it was something that we were surprised about, but what we've learned in working with so many survivors, they are so fiercely independent, and many of them have not wanted services, and many have not felt that they needed anybody to come into their home. So it was, the one way that that challenge was overcome was just by the relations we have with them, and by after some time and discussions, the door was open. Next. Okay, as I mentioned, here's some contact information, including a link to the video, the full 10-minute video, and hopefully it's going to be at some point, stay tuned, on PBS or what have you, a full-length documentary. I want to just say thank you. It's been a true honor to serve Holocaust survivors through creative means, both For me and for the others, I could speak on behalf of the staff here at JFS Orange, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our experience with you. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Elise. So now we'll move on to the question and answer portion. Please use the chat function in the Zoom window to send us any questions you have for any of the speakers. We'll give you all a couple of minutes to get your thoughts together. And you can send them to us. And if we don't get to your question, please email it to us at holocaustcenter@jewishfederations.org, and we will respond as soon as we can. So far, we have no questions, but we are expecting some. So please send in any questions you have for the speakers. Okay, so we have one. How is this program funded? Who are you asking that question of? All three. They are all funded by JF&A. JF&A has a grant from the U.S. Administration for Community Living and the Administration on Aging, as well as funds raised through private philanthropy. A couple other questions are coming in.
Oh.
We have had difficulty getting survivors from the former Soviet Union and other parts of Europe to mingle at events. How did you make this happen, especially when there are language and cultural barriers? What a great question. Does anybody feel especially able to answer this? Maybe Maria?
Hi, yeah. So as of now, because a lot of our programs are run in Russian, they're pretty separated. Ideally, we would like to find a way to bring them together, to bring Holocaust survivors from the former Soviet Union and Holocaust survivors from other parts of Europe together to mingle and to form connections. But right now, because this program really addresses the gap in services, because the services that we provide were not provided in Russian, we do not have that opportunity. But that's something that we would also like to do.
One person asked, can you give an example about how a client healed from clinical trauma from CAT, not just how they connected or gained confidence? So I think that's creative arts therapy. So an example of how a client healed from clinical trauma due to receiving creative arts therapy, not just how they connected or gained confidence, a deeper clinical understanding of that.
Yeah, I can speak on that a little bit, if that's okay, unless someone else wants to.
That's fine, thank you.
Yeah, so healing from trauma is a long-term process, especially, you know, if you think about what our participants went through: trauma from the Holocaust, trauma from oppression they experienced in the former Soviet Union, as well as anti-Semitism, trauma from coming to a new country, assimilating, for many of them, loss and grief. So in terms of working with them, right, first, we are providing them with those coping tools because healing from trauma is a difficult process. So sometimes it will feel a little worse before it feels better. So in that way, you know, they're able to have the tools to go deeper and to be well when they're going deeper and healing from that. So through individual meetings, I found that, you know, after some things would come up through creative arts therapies, they would request individual meetings. So we would process those things both visually and through dance movement therapy. They would work on their dance movement therapy about letting go of some things, right? So there's that physical representation of it. And then holding on to the things that they want to keep in their life. And I found that, through the creation of the family album, there were a lot of feelings that came up, a lot of traumatic events, right? Like not having any connection to one side of your family and seeing that visual representation of it, experiencing the feelings that come up as a result, and finding, that you really survived and revived, right? Hence, like the name of our program, right? So even though the album may start out with the family members that they lost, seeing, their grandchildren, and even if they don't have children, their nieces and nephews, and just like people in their lives that are living and reviving, and those that they can leave a legacy for, has been really therapeutic. But it's something that we're still working on. Like someone from the first cycle, I'm still meeting with individually. And it obviously doesn't happen overnight because trauma is so complex, which is, again, like the difference between someone who experiences acute trauma, which may also take some time, but complex trauma I found takes even longer. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. I know there's so much more that I can talk about, but I hope.
Thanks so much, Maria.
I would love to chime in for a moment and to say the way the question is worded, it has to do with people having been healed from trauma. And I'm not sure that anyone is ever healed fully. It really is a process. And one thing that many of the tools, techniques, therapies, methods do is to help an individual cope with trauma, learn how the trauma I'm saying, is always going to be there. There's always going to be that wound in the heart, but how can we work with the wound? How can we find joy and coping mechanisms in the face of the trauma? So it would be more like healing, and healing probably continues until we die. I don't know that being fully healed is ever a realistic expectation.
But something that I forgot to mention that I want to make sure that I do, because the question was about creative arts therapies in particular, and that's something that I talk about with our participants, is how the creative arts therapies taps into a different side of the brain, right? So if we think about, the left side versus the right side, and different way that trauma is integrated and processed, and how trauma lives in the body, the way that, that's why a lot of times we use both counseling and creative arts therapies, because that allows for the bilateral stimulation in the brain.
Great.
Maria, I am completely with you that it is such an impactful way to work with survivors of trauma. Beautiful.
Thank you both for framing that beautifully. Next, we have a question specifically for Nicole. What ideas have worked for you to gain entrance to a client's home initially? I'm sure many of your clients were initially resistant to accepting help.
I think that would probably be better for our care managers, but I think that we have care managers that have gone into their home to get them signed up for services, I think is what, and I don't really know how else to answer. I'm not one of the care managers that goes into their homes, but I know that getting them signed up for services and them knowing from word of mouth, really, that's how we've increased our survivors from 30 to 50 in just the past years, from word of mouth from other survivors. And so they're usually at a time where they need help now. And so they're very welcoming of in their homes. Even when I've done other visits, we've done side visits, not for work, but not for this program. They're always welcoming us into the home, wanting to give us food and treats and whatever. And I think that it's their way of showing appreciation for the services we're providing. So I don't really know how to best answer that. I don't know.
Great, thank you, Nicole. I have one quick question that I got that relates to another question that I think I can answer briefly. Somebody asked, have you been able to fund programs as ongoing? And Elise Gold, one of our speakers, asked that we please mention that we ask our subgrantees to raise matching funds in addendum to the funds that we give them through the grant that we receive from the federal government. So the speakers have all received 2-year grants from JF&A, and we fund part of it, and part of their funding comes from their own match that they raise to help them cultivate a successful and sustainable program at their agency and in their community. So I just wanted to touch on that briefly. Let's see, we have a bunch more questions. Somebody asked, how have survivor participants described their appreciation for art and dance therapy? If anybody has an answer, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so they're always, are open to providing feedback. A lot of times we have to, be very clear that, we want them to be honest. So we're not asking them for thank you letters, but a lot of times we end up getting thank you letters. A lot of times the best feedback is when they talk about their experience, right? When they talk about how for the first time they forget about the grief and depression and physical pain when they're in a dance movement therapy class, when they're able to really relax and apply the tools that they learn in art therapy in their home, when they request those individual meetings and describe the trust that happens between, them and the facilitator or each other. But they're very appreciative, more appreciative, to be honest, than I expected. And yeah, it's been one of the, I guess, positive surprises that came out of it. There's much more appreciation than entitlement.
Wonderful. We have a question that is specifically for Elise. Somebody wrote in to say that they would like to put on a concert at their agency and would like more information regarding the involvement of songwriters and the whole process. Elise kindly added her contact information, and when we send out the PowerPoint to all participants, I'll open this to her to answer, but since she provided her contact information, you are of course welcome to reach out to Orange County for some assistance.
And know that we are a human service provider, and while we have many talents, we don't have songwriters on staff, so we wound up partnering with another nonprofit. And I understand that there are nonprofits like Sage Arts throughout the country. I am familiar with one in the Southwest called Life Songs. So to answer the question about how to put on a concert, it's really all about partnership. And I'm reading the question. It does say about songs being in Russian. Interestingly, our songwriters did really tune in with the survivors that they worked with, and some lines from some of the songs were in both Hebrew and French. We had a French survivor, so that was really beautiful to be speaking their language. So I think you'd have to find some really masterful songwriters to work with. Good luck, and certainly reach out if you need more assistance.
Thanks, Elise.
Sure.
Questions keep rolling in. So somebody asked, and I think this would apply to all three of you, so whoever wants to chime in is welcome. How did you transport all of the survivors to one location for events?
Well, this is Nicole. For our events, a lot of our survivors drive, but we also have a partnership or a relationship with Lyft, and so I'm able to access a concierge page and get them transportation, or they drive together or pick up each other. Most of our clients drive.
It's Elise here. In our case, both the art and the songwriting occurred in the survivor's home. The only real transportation had to do with going to the concert, and either family members took the survivors to the concert or we made arrangements.
Elise, maybe you have some insight into how to get survivors to allow volunteers into their homes, because I know that was a big component of your songwriting process.
Well, thankfully, we didn't do any cold calls. We have, over decades, a really warm, trusting relationship with the survivors because we've offered many other services. I will tell you one challenge is when starting to introduce, this was all so new to us, and when introducing the idea, many people were like, I'm not musical, I don't have a musical bone in my body, and others were shy about telling their story. And another mistake that we made was we talked a little bit about the end result, that it was going to be ending up in a concert right around Yom HaShoah, and all those were mistakes because survivors, many, would run the opposite direction when they heard that. So what we needed to do was change our tune. And again, like with all PCTI methods, meet the survivor where they are. Think about what is it that would resonate with them. So we weren't talking about the Yom HaShoah concert at all, but we were talking about what an amazing story, how interesting they are, and wouldn't it be wonderful to share it with others? I hope I answered your question.
You absolutely did. Thank you so much, Elise. I have a couple of softball questions that I think anybody can answer. And I'm just going to combine these. How many participants did each of the 3 programs reach, and what is the average age of the participants? I'd like to hear from all 3 of you, actually. I think that our participants are interested in hearing how many you reached and what the average age is. So, Nicole, would you like to go first?
We send out about 50 invitations to all of our survivors, and we usually have about 25 participants. So I think that 50% attendance rates for us was really impressive. I think at first we were expecting okay, we'll be lucky if we have 10. And then the age of our clients, gosh, I guess early 80s for most of them.
Okay, thank you. Elise?
For the songwriting, there were 10 survivors. 8 of the pieces were performed at the most recent concert, and the other 2, otherwise it will be performed at another time. Otherwise, the concert would have been too long. In the art, it was close to 30. Average age, I would say a bit older than what we heard before. Late 80s, early 90s, I would say, is the average age.
Great. And Maria?
Yeah, so overall, all our programs that I described, I think on the 4th slide or something like that, reach close to 200. For the family albums class, we had to cap it at 10. Sometimes it was more if a couple was working on a family album together, just because we have 10 computers available and different skills and technology. So a lot of people needed support, both technological and emotional. For now, art and relaxation, it can be up to 30. Dance movement therapy was also up to 30 people per class. The ages really vary. So some people are as young as in their 70s up to their 90s. And average is probably in their 80s.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Maria next. Maria, you mentioned adjusting based on client feedback. Can you discuss what specifically you found you needed to change?
Oh yeah, a lot of things. I don't even know where to start. I think one of the things that I can think of in terms of arts therapy is, even though they were asking for something that involves technology, a lot of them had very limited skills in technology, especially, a participant in her 90s. So being able to make things easier, provide cheat sheets, reminding them that the focus is really on, the therapeutic process and being able to reflect on their lives and not being experts in technology. We also had requests to involve more people in, like, partners in sharing their albums. So we did that. When it came to dance movement therapy, even though yoga and dance movement therapy are different, being able to incorporate dance movement therapy into, yoga into dance movement therapy, being able to adjust to different ability levels. Some people can dance standing up, other people can't. So being able to get them involved and make them feel connected and involved and reduce that stigma around, mental health or physical disabilities in a way that feels therapeutic to them and makes them feel connected. Does that
Thank you
answer
for that.
your question? But yeah, there's
It does.
many ways.
Thank you
that we
for
had
that
to do that.
thoughtful response, Maria. We have time for only one more question. We got a question emailed into us about clients with dementia and how that affects the creative therapies that they can receive and how they can interact with those therapies. Does anybody have an example or a thought about that?
I have an interesting story from a man who I'll call Alan, and he was participated with our songwriting program, and the songwriter who visited him time after time after time, every time she came, Alan did not recognize her. And it's like, who are you? Do I know you? Did I ever meet you before? And of course, she was there many times, but he couldn't recognize her. But each time, and as we mentioned, there's stories that are told and shared, and each time he shared similar stories, or the same stories again and again. So she knew that these stories were really valid. And when finally, after 5 or 6 visits, and the songwriter, Elizabeth, played for him, Alan, the first draft of the song, he lit up. And he said, "That's my story." So it was a beautiful partnership between Elizabeth and Alan. In spite of his dementia, it really worked for him.
That's such a beautiful story, Elise. Thank you so much. I know that there's a couple of questions we did not get to, and I apologize. We will make sure that somebody responds to you via email this week or next week. So we're going to move on to the next steps. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar, and we hope that you were able to really interact with this meaningful presentation. Please note that we have a training workshop coming up in DC, September 24th to the 25th, and everybody is welcome, and we really look forward to seeing you there. If you have any questions after today for us or the speakers, please reach out to us at holocaustcenter@jewishfederations.org. And a reminder to please complete the webinar evaluation survey that we're going to send you in a follow-up email. And for all current sub-grantees, so all Charlies and Deltas, please verify your participation. We'll send you the link to that with the webinar evaluation email. The secret word is creativity. And so you'll type that into the prompt, and then we can verify that you participated in this webinar. Thank you again to our speakers who spent time and energy on creating these really rich and informative presentations. And thank you to all of our participants for logging in. Have a great day. Bye.